Let's shift gears here, though, quickly on Live Now from Fox. Take you out to New York City, but not for more anti-ICE demonstrations. Instead, it is a continuation of more about the Sean Diddy Combs trial in New York City, as we're following that very closely here on Live Now from Fox, as well as more testimony from the ex-girlfriend of Sean Diddy Combs, pseudonym going by Jane. So we're following that very closely here. As you can see, some members of Sean Diddy Combs' family exiting the courtroom right now. And this comes as the recent ex-girlfriend told Combs that she cried for 3 days after reading Cassie's lawsuit against the music mogul, a case that described hundreds of drug-laced marathon sex sessions with Combs and other men as horrific encounters. All right, let's continue on. Bring into the conversation right now TMZ executive producer Michael Babcock. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now. We know that of course, it wrapped up today in terms of what we're hearing from the defense there, but cross-examination coming up next. What did we learn today, and can you tell me more about this? Because she said, this partner said that she almost fainted when reading this lawsuit that Cassie brought forward that was ultimately settled just a day later for $20 million.
I mean, clearly cared about this person in Diddy. And, you know, they had a relationship that spanned a couple of years period. And, you know, today in court, I mean, she talked about some of the emotions, Andy, that she had been feeling. And especially as we got towards what was ultimately the end of their relationship. I mean, she was very upset that Diddy was out with other women, that she was not exclusively his partner. And it bothered her, and it really affected her, especially, Andy, when she would then ask, he would then ask, excuse me, for her to then participate in these freak-off sessions. And she texted him, and this was one of the messages they read in court today, and she said something to the effect of, "I'm not a porn star and I'm not an animal." And I think it just goes to show, I mean, she cared about him and she wanted to be with him and she wanted to make Diddy happy, but she did not, if you believe her testimony and what she was saying in the moment, Andy, she did not enjoy, especially as the relationship progressed, some of the things that Diddy was asking her to do. But she said that she felt obligated, was a word that she used. He was not just somebody who was important to her on a romantic level, but he was somebody who was, you know, was financing her life, was paying her expensive rent. And again, because of that, she said that she felt obligated to go along and to do what he wanted her to do.
I just want to ask you, because we talk about Cassie and they ended their relationship and they went through all of that. That was really the first bombshell, the star witness there in terms of this individual, this ex-girlfriend going by the name of Jane, read this lawsuit. Was she still in a relationship with Diddy at that time, at that exact moment?
Yes, absolutely. Because they, and you may remember this, Andy, last week, then she said that she actually had stayed with him and essentially until they had split then. And so you can only imagine for her, as somebody who was in Diddy's life, to read these things, these horrible, horrible allegations that were made in Cassie's lawsuit last year, and just the deep impact that it clearly had on her. And they very much were still together up until very recently, only months ago.
Yeah, that is so very true. It's so very interesting, and it's always very powerful when you hear them speak out some of these text messages, and that is a key component to this. I do want to ask you, because we're going to get into cross-examination later on this week. We saw a similar thing happen with Mia, the other individual that's going by an alias, another person that is accused Diddy of some of these assaults and being a part of these freak-offs, these hours-long, days-long sex sessions. We saw it. Do we imagine the cross-examination is going to be as tense as it was for some of the previous people on the stand?
I would imagine that it would be, India. Obviously, we know that they want to tread carefully because they don't want to be seen, the defense, as attacking somebody who is the victim, or possibly the victim of alleged domestic violence. So they've got to thread the needle a bit from that standpoint, but they need to poke holes in some of the prosecution witness, their stories, right? And we know with Mia, Diddy really felt like his defense team was poking some holes and was was making some ground, and that's why he got in trouble. He got admonished by the judge because remember he was shaking his head vigorously at the jury, and I think you're going to see questioning that is along those same lines. But perhaps Diddy doesn't shake his head this time. But yeah, I expect, Andy, that they're going to try and show some inconsistencies here. I think they've done a fairly effective job. As a matter of fact, they've asked for a mistrial for something that a woman, Brianna Bongalin, who was Cassie's friend and a designer, she was the one that claimed that Diddy had held her over the 17th floor balcony. Well, Diddy's defense team believes that she either lied or misremembered. Anyway, she testified to the date actually being incorrect. And because of that, they've now asked for a mistrial, which the judge, by the way, is going to address tomorrow. So, look, is it an incredible long shot? Of course. But I suppose there's a universe where this trial is actually thrown out tomorrow, Andy. Although, again, I think that is a very much a long shot here.
Yeah, and of course, that's what the cross-examination is about. The defense trying to do, put those seeds of doubt, as that's what this case relies on. We saw Cassie up first, very powerful. She was one of the first people to testify. Could this be one of the last witnesses we see in terms of this before the defense is up? Could she be really the bookend to what the prosecution has?
Yeah, because look, there was a bunch of witnesses, but in the end, there was only a handful of alleged victims here. And with Cassie, Mia, and Jane, we've we're pretty much through the witnesses, the alleged victims, Andy, that are going to take the stand here. Now, sure, certainly could be some former employees. They've obviously put a bunch of those on the stand, having with people who have been around Diddy for more than a decade in some cases. So, not to say that there's not going to be any more witnesses, but we are getting to the point here where the prosecution is going to rest their case, and then the defense will pick this thing up. And before you know it, possibly before July 4th, we could potentially have a verdict here.
Yeah, we're full steam ahead, more than halfway through. It is kind of interesting, wild to say that. Anything else, Michael, that you took away from today that we're looking forward over to the next couple days?
No, I think mostly it's going to be this mistrial ruling. Last time, it's not the first time they've asked for the mistrial. Remember when they had made some allegations, they had accused Diddy, the prosecution did, of having played a role in Kid Cudi's Porsche being burnt with that Molotov cocktail. And the defense said, hey, look, there's nothing to link him to that incident. And because of that, we should get a mistrial. Well, the judge immediately in that case said, no, you're not getting a mistrial. Here, at least, the judge saying, okay, let me look at this a little bit more closely. So perhaps that's a little bit of reason for hope on the defense side. Obviously, they would retry the case, but it would then provide the defense with the luxury of having seen the prosecution's entire case, more or less. So I don't think that's going to happen again, but I think that on Tuesday, that'll be one of the big things that a lot of people are going to be looking at. What does the judge rule on that request for a mistrial?
All right, well, we're going to be tuning in for that. Michael Babcock, thank you so much for breaking it all down here on Live Now from Fox. I appreciate your time.